General, I want to ask you about the Atlantic's description of the video. We've had the privilege of getting to talk to you, I think, just about every news cycle, and this is the most explicit description of what is on the video. And I wonder if you hear anything that squares the circle we've been trying to get our brains around here as to why, up and down the chain of command, the second strike takes place.
Nothing in my mind, Nicole, justifies a second strike on this. You know, there are going to be debates between both sides of the aisle about the legality of it. I understand that there are some lawyers now requesting that the Department of Defense and the General Counsel give them the papers that authorize this. And this harkens back to me exactly to something I experienced in 2003, and that was the Abu Ghraib scandal. It was something that was illegal. You don't treat prisoners the way they were treated at Abu Ghraib. The same way you don't treat those who are narco-terrorists, give the description to an immediate death sentence. And if I can, I'd like to kind of expand on what Miles said, because there is a history of Secretary Hegseth countering rules of engagement or thinking they are too strict. But they are things that are illegal. That's what they try and prevent. But they also try and prevent things that are immoral. And I'll use another RO indicator, and that's ROI. The return on the investment of this, like Miles said, is contrary to what we would expect in any kind of operational campaign. To not capture prisoners, to not find out where the supply chain leads, to not know who the key figures are in this kind of operation, and to trace them backwards, and then bombing a boat with a missile that probably cost a couple of $100,000 just doesn't make sense to me at all, from a military perspective or from a business perspective. And there's one other thing that I'd say, and I'm almost hesitant to say it, but this is the kind of things that will take our allies and push them away from us. We are already seeing that in the countries surrounding Venezuela. We had a 30-year counter-narcotics campaign in Colombia that was relatively successful. You've got several nation states in Latin America and South America that are now saying, we don't want any part of the United States and we don't understand what they're doing. That may be one of the things that Admiral Halsey is talking about today. But you also have European allies and several other allies saying, this is not the America that proclaims values and ideologies. So we're losing more than just the argument on illegality in terms of what's being done in this campaign.
The Trump administration is also losing what they've enjoyed for the better part of 10 years, which is a firewall or a moat, or however you want to describe the Republican Party. Here's three prominent Republican senators saying that the video, the second strike, should be released.
About this double tap strike, do you think it would make sense for the administration to release this video?
I'm okay with it being released, and I'm okay with what happened.
Listen, if there's a way to release the video, which I have not seen, but if there's a way to release that does not compromise our intelligence gathering, I would urge them to do it.
And Tillis has also said we've got to release the video. We've got to get any videos that do not in any way compromise mission integrity down there. Just get the stuff out. Almost an urgency on his part to get the video into the public arena.
The administration has already released 20-some videos of boat strikes. So to hold it up against on the terms of not wanting to reveal intelligence methods or weaponry is a bit of a stretch. I think a lot of Republicans see that and realize you can't release 22 videos and then not this other one. However, because of what we've heard based on the video, you can understand why they may be sensitive to release it. Pete Hegseth has now the authority to release it, given to him by Trump. President Trump said he would release it. Then he said it's up to Pete. Secretary Hegseth indicated this weekend that we have to be careful. We don't want to reveal too much.
What is revealed in the second strike that isn't revealed in the other 22?
What I don't understand is how you can say we're holding this up on the basis of this when we've been so transparent about all of these other strikes. But I don't know if releasing the video will. I think what's important to Americans is to see it for themselves, because we are hearing Republicans and supporters of Admiral Bradley say totally justified. These men were not shipwrecked. They were clearly on top of a piece of the boat. that was likely being held up by the drugs, trying to flip it over, and they could conceivably continue
Is that on
their
the
mission.
video? Can you see the drugs under the boat?
So the people who've seen the video say you can see the men on top of the remnant of the boat. And Admiral Bradley assessed that it was being held up by the drugs are wrapped in packages that are buoyant. So the assessment was that this piece of boat wouldn't be floating if the drugs weren't underneath it. And therefore, the men were trying to flip it, salvage the drugs, and they could potentially carry on with their rendezvous.
With their hands?
Passing the drugs off to another ship.
But how did these Republicans defending the operation think they were going to take the drugs trapped under the boat, under the piece of wood, to land?
So, I mean, if you listen to Senator Cotton, he was saying totally justified target. The men could have continued with their mission. They were meeting up with another boat to pass the drugs off before the strike. And then you have so many other Democrats and privately Republicans saying that's not at all what we saw in this video. And I think that's why it's so important to release it to the American people, because when everyone sees it with their own eyes, they'll be able to make their own decision. They won't have to listen to the 6 congressmen who have seen it.
Right. General Hertling, how does any of that ring to your ear?
Rings true to me, Nicole. And I got to tell you, as you know, I've been in these kind of strikes, conducted these kind of strikes. It's easy to release the videos and sanitize it. There's not a whole lot other than grid coordinates on it, perhaps a radio call. But I got to tell you again, this was September the 2nd. If the military hasn't sanitized that video already, there's something wrong. They also have a phrase you're familiar with, the TikTok. There is a series of log entries, either on a computer or handwritten, in terms of what was said, who said it, how it went down according to a timeline. So, you know, if the secretary is so proud of releasing, like you just said, 20 some odd videos of the strike, then he should be proud of releasing a little bit more of the second strike, because there's no difference between that second strike being sanitized, which they do immediately in order to release it to the press, and the first strike. So I don't get it. And Secretary Hegseth continuing to delay, deflect, saying we're trying to sanitize. He said the other day it would reveal TTPs and sources and methods. And all I can say is that's BS. Just complete BS. I know what sources and methods are. TTPs are tactics, techniques, and procedures, and it's not going to reveal any of that.
And the top story in politics is how affordability, high prices, and economic pain are shaping voters' priorities, including powering that Democratic sweep in last month's elections. President Trump noticed. He's responding tonight, speaking in Pennsylvania on a tour that has been touted as his sort of response to voters' concerns. And we have a view from Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania. Vaughn Hilliard will be reporting for us there shortly. You're looking at part of that tour. Trump's planned speech is also an implicit follow-up to that unusual meeting he had with the Democratic Socialist and Mayor-elect of New York, Zohran Mamdani. There, the president seemed to recognize almost in real time that this progressive has some kind of appeal. Trump even talked up some of Mamdani's New York plans, which confounded and upset his own MAGA base. But that may have been the instinct of a president who realizes he is unpopular right now, even as he attacks the polls that show it. He's watched economic anxiety supercharge what was a slow budding, but now clearly wider revolt against what has been a rocky first year of this term, to say the least. From inflation to Epstein, the president has seen his policies and plans rebuked, not just on the left or the broad, angry middle, the No Kings protests, concerned about what this administration is doing to the government and the fiber of the country as we know it, but also to many people on the right who pay the same prices as everybody else. I have more on that in a moment. But remember, the president who began this same year, fresh off what was clearly a comeback election, and pushed those shockwave reforms with his billionaire ally, Elon Musk, who strong-armed concessions from businesses and law firms. If you put aside morality, ethics, and even the Constitution just for a minute, politically, in those first few months, he looked like he had some momentum. But he soon found Musk was gone. Many of those cuts failed. Some companies even stopped surrendering. Disney, standing up for Jimmy Kimmel under public pressure, seemed like one shifting inflection point. So, tonight, Trump takes the stage on defense. High prices, flailing economic policy. And he's moving billions in taxpayer dollars to farmers to make up for his own costly tariffs, which still grind on, driving up prices for Americans across all kinds of products. And people have noticed. Look at how many people say prices are now worse than ever, worse than they remember ever in their lives. And you say, okay, Ari, 46%, I don't know. Is that just people who don't like Trump? Nope. About a third of Trump voters, 37%, say the cost of living is worse than ever. You cannot spin people out of their experience paying high prices every day. Trump saw high prices were a huge political issue last time around. He ran on them against Harris. We all remember that, only to find that facing his own accountability now for these high prices is harder. Funny how that works. And he's been zigzagging on what he means, says, or claims about what we're all living through in the polling I just showed you, the affordability crisis.
One of my top priorities will be to quickly defeat inflation and make America affordable again.
There's this fake narrative that the Democrats talk about, affordability. They just say the word. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. The word affordability is a con job by the Democrats.
We're also making incredible strides to make America affordable again. That's a new word that they're using, affordability. The word affordability. I inherited a mess. I inherited a total mess.
A mess. And you know, you can't fix a mess in the real world by just lying about it. So I want to talk about messengers for a moment. Take a look at this. Everybody walks down aisles like this. People are living these prices. People have to make trade-offs as they pay those high prices, which could be above budget or put you into debt for feeding your family. And then you go into the holidays. People see the economic and political news on TV and online. And wherever they get their news, you know about the inflation crisis. And yet, while we're told don't shoot the messenger, Trump has been trying to do everything he can to distort coverage, often just accurate coverage of these facts and his administration's problems, what he calls the mess. Apparently, he knows there's a problem. It's a mess. He just says he inherited it. And he has done a lot more than just shoot the messenger. I just want to remind you tonight, as this all comes together and he gives this big address, he's tried to sue the messenger, and he got some strong-arm settlements from media companies. He tried to cancel the messenger, the failed bid to get Jimmy Kimmel fired. He tries to bully the messenger, lashing out at reporters with insults and attacks that would have seemed completely like another place, time, or country in any other era, something he has normalized, including a raft of sexist, misogynistic attacks on reporters, they're journalists, who happen to be women. But tonight I want to tell you, you have to add, going beyond the old talk about shooting the messenger, add the big government anti-conservative MAGA playbook right now. Buy the messenger. Let me explain what I mean. Remember, the government is barred from abusing powers like regulation or taxes to control free speech. You can imagine a tin pot wannabe autocrat trying to say, oh, well, if we have the tax audit power, let's just audit the media we don't like and let's go at them. And that's something Nixon once tried, but the First Amendment and our laws ban that. And yet, in a related type of abuse, Trump now wants one of his billionaire allies to get control of CNN. And I'm speaking about them as a group of journalists who do good work. They happen to be a competitor right now. It may not be a secret to you that you have this channel on and other channels are available. But I want to speak about them as our peers, journalists who need to operate in a capitalist economy that is fair and not abused by an autocrat. And that applies, of course, to other media as well. Because right now, Trump is trying to help an ally get control of CNN over other corporate bidders. Now, this is what Republicans once criticized as picking winners and losers in the market. We don't do that in America. It has business and media leaders aghast. Some, still in this Trump bully environment, are afraid to say so in public. Others have indicated it, but nobody thinks this is fair. And I'm talking about this story, Trump eyeing interference in the epic battle that's shaping up for what is called here by The Economist the future of entertainment. They're referring to that huge deal we've been reporting on where Netflix is now trying to buy Warner Brothers for many, many billions of dollars. But now a MAGA billionaire ally in the Ellison family wants to get Warner in what they call a hostile bid that would potentially also determine the ownership of CNN. And while Trump has interfered in other ways and obviously is worried about comics like Kimmel, he apparently cares a lot about CNN and news. We've all seen that. I don't think you need a lot of examples to prove that. We're talking about control of major parts of the information ecosystem. Warner Brothers, of course, huge across movies and television. What they make matters. What they don't make, because politicians pressure them or request it, also matters. And Trump, of course, has also pressed tech companies to change their policies to favor him, ending fact-checking at Meta and other places. This hostile bid involves David Ellison, backed by his father, Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison, along with Elon Musk, is one of the richest people in the whole world. You can see all the different media that's consolidating here, along with the billionaire Bezos. The Ellisons already got control of CBS, which led to changes at their news division in 60 Minutes. Some journalists objected and resigned over it. And while I told you the First Amendment requires respect for free speech and press, instead of the required independence, Trump apparently wants to be kept regularly appraised of how the DOJ could probe this Netflix deal I'm telling you about, that according to reporting in the Journal. Pam Bondi, who runs the DOJ, has done basically everything Trump wants, including reversing herself on the Epstein issue, installing prosecutors so illegally that two, not one, but two, have now been fired by federal judges, an indignity we have not actually seen in the modern era of the DOJ. So with her in charge and Trump wanting to interfere, Trump could try to push her to misuse DOJ oversight of this merger to stop it. To put it simply, he could try to get Bondi to stop what is currently happening in the free market and the deal going to Netflix to help get it over to these MAGA allies, the Ellisons. They want to buy Warner instead of Netflix, and they want some parts of the deal that Netflix isn't even currently pursuing, which brings us back, as I mentioned, to CNN. David Ellison, quote, offered assurances to Trump officials that if he bought Warner, he'd make sweeping changes to CNN, the Journal reports. Now, Ellison recently did say he's talked to Trump, but that he won't speak for him on the CNN issues. So we haven't heard his whole side of it, but Trump apparently admits to people around him that he wants new ownership of CNN and changes to their programming. So now you see how we got here. If a politician doesn't like the messengers at CNN, he can try to get his allies to buy the messenger. New ownership, as they put it in that article, and then start changing programming. So what we're seeing shape up and now really leak out in public is Kimmel Round 2, but with way bigger stakes. And instead of Disney being pushed by the people, by you or some people, because at first they had the indefinite suspension and then they came back, but instead of Disney ultimately being pushed by the public to back Kimmel, here, if this goes down, the new buyers might be ready to give Trump what he wants, those programming changes. The First Amendment bars this kind of plot. Netflix is currently in the lead to get this deal if the Trump administration does not intervene by getting Attorney General Bondi to basically use the DOJ to try to block it. Now, the First Amendment protects the Ellisons too. They may buy and run media how they see fit. An honest First Amendment advocate defends their speech and media, or MAGA media, or Fox News, right along with everyone else's free speech. But the problem does come in if the federal government, Trump, abuses power to interfere in this free market, trying to distort what you see, what you hear, to help his own government. And that's at the cost of free speech and perhaps the truth itself. So here we are. This is one time where the free market and free speech are on the same side, while a politician tries to interfere with both, to shape coverage of his record and his economic problems, what he calls his mess, rather than, maybe trying to fix the actual mess instead of buying the messenger.
Vaughn, we understand from your reporting that one of Trump's controversial judicial picks, Emil Bovee, is at the rally. Pretty unusual for a federal judge to attend a political rally.
absolutely. He was going through the magnetometers to come into the event, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Judge Emil Bove, who was his personal attorney, then of course was in the DOJ, the number 3 there, where he worked to provide ultimately that pardon for New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and then was given that federal judgeship under the appointment of Donald Trump. And I asked him what he was doing here it isn't technically an official White House event, but as we know from the president, he makes these events political. And he told me that he was here as a private citizen, wanting to hear from the president of the United States. He's over there in about row 3. He got here 2.5 hours before the event. It is very atypical to see a federal judge, let alone one of his stature, at an event like this. We, of course, see Supreme Court justices there for the State of the Union addresses, but this was very abnormal, and there's a series of questions, of course, that he is facing here in real time. And guys, this is just kind of I think it's worth noting, his first event like this since July 3rd. He has effectively stayed off of what you would call the campaign trail for the better part of the last 5 months. So this is really his return, and one in which we also saw Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent take the microphone just a few minutes ago. So I think it's a question of exactly what the president actually focuses on tonight.
Well, if you listen to Susie Weil, he better buckle up, because he is hitting that trail harder than ever. Vaughn Hilliard for us in Pennsylvania. Vaughn, as always, thank you. Let's bring in Congressman Brendan Boyle of the great state of Pennsylvania. He is the top Democrat on the House Budget Committee.
Congressman, welcome to the table. So I just want to offset the record straight. Maybe you can confirm, sir, that when you're a federal judge and you go to a political rally, you're not there in your capacity as a private citizen.
I didn't know you could go to the rally.
I didn't know you could go, but maybe
I've never seen that before.
Maybe there's something we don't know. Your take on this rally and what I think is a desperation move by a president who has to sit there and claim he's a 5 times plus. If you got to tell me you're more than 1 plus, you got a problem. Because, right, Simone, right?
Well, I think the only thing A++ in that interview was, in fact, Dasha Burns' makeup.
There you go. But you don't have to address that.
What a segue.
You don't have to address that. But we do want to get your sense of what you are reading from Pennsylvanians about the president being there. Even Vaughn reported that in the room, you got to be.
Yeah. First, I mean, it's remarkable, and I give him credit for taking time away from the busy work of building a new ballroom and doing the interior decorating of the White House, and spending the last year, really, holed up either in the White House or Bedminster or with his fellow billionaires at Mar-a-Lago. Just a few days ago, he said that the affordability issue was a con. The real con is that he was all throughout Pennsylvania last year, visited my state more than any other state in the country, saying that he would bring prices down on day one. That was the real con job. So here we are a year later. Prices are higher now than they were when he first took office. And in addition to that, because of his bill, 15 million people are going to lose their health care over the course of the next 11 months. Why? To pay for tax breaks for billionaires. That's why he's so deeply unpopular, more unpopular today on economic issues than at any point in his presidency, first term or this one.
He's putting the president and the White House, honestly, they're putting a lot of stock in curating the story that they want to be told. Instead of just actually improving the reality for people. Right. And, I've seen this happen in campaigns, campaign after campaign after campaign. And it makes a difference. When you have a rally or even any kind of political event in a state, you're supposed to highlight the local people. I was shocked to hear Vaughn say Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was joining the stage. The local voices should be there to validate what the president is saying about the economy. Do you think the gaslighting that we're experiencing here is going to work? Do you think people will see through this?
Well, first, we know so far it's not working, because literally just a month ago in Pennsylvania, from right outside Philadelphia in Bucks County, all the way 5 hours away to Erie County, and basically every competitive race in between, Democrats overperformed by double digits, which was a pretty similar performance that we saw in Virginia, New Jersey, all the way out to California and their ballot initiative. So the early evidence is the political impact of Trump's failure as president has been damaging on anyone else who is running under the Republican brand. I would point out, not only is Donald Trump right now, and of course the biggest battleground state in the nation, He's actually at this moment in one of those battleground congressional districts, a district that went Republican by only 1 point last election, and is one of our biggest target opportunities. I'd be very curious if the local Republican member of Congress is there tonight at this rally.
There are going to be lots of questions for voters about the economy, about inflation. There's some great analysis from the Century Foundation about what popular holiday gifts are going to cost this year. Some up 38%, electronics up 34%, clothing, shoes, accessories up 20%. So everyone is going to feel that. But then there's the reality of these forthcoming health care premium hikes, which it seems Republicans in the House now understand is a real political liability for them. I'm not sure why it took so long, but they don't seem to be gelling against any single policy proposal. And perhaps that is because Obamacare is actually, it turns out, the most elegant solution to the current market challenge.
It started out, ironically, as Romneycare,
which was
an idea, which was the center-right idea of the 1990s, almost introduced in the U.S. Senate by Bob Dole.
Yeah.
But then, of course, Barack Obama started to champion it, so it must be a crazy socialist idea probably hatched in Kenya, according to the far right and the people who, let's face it, morphed into the MAGA moment. I don't exactly think they were really caring about deficit and debt. They were caring perhaps about some other things, and Donald Trump was able to essentially take over that movement. So 15 years after Republicans intellectually, dishonestly railed against Obamacare, 15 years later, they still have absolutely no health care plan of their own. Just a few hours ago, Mike Johnson said he was working on health care, and he hopes to have a plan in the second quarter.
Michael Steele, did they call you?
Nobody
because
called on
what the congressman is saying is, that struck me, that they still don't have a plan.
Well, they don't have. They didn't have one. I remember sitting in meetings with leadership and asking the question, okay, why can't we present something? Because I'm out on the political side saying, hey, we need to be concerned about what Obamacare can do, you know, having the government step in between the patient and the doctor. And with 14 House Republicans who were doctors themselves could not develop a plan. Which brings us to this moment. I want to play for you a part of Trump on health care in the Dasha Burns interview, which was, to me, striking. And I'm going to tell you why in a second. Go ahead.
So right now, people are buying their holiday presents. They're planning.
Look, don't be dramatic.
No.
Don't be dramatic.
They're planning their budgets for next year, Mr. President.
I know, and what I want to do is help them.
So will their premiums go up?
I'm giving them money. I want to give the money to the people to buy their own health care.
So at this point, most likely premiums will go up, and you will find another plan?
Your premiums could go down if you did what I want to do. I want to give the money.
Sir.
Ready? I want to give the people better health insurance for less money.
All right, so that's a crock, number one. Number two, this man has never had to pay a premium in his life. He's never had to worry about whether or not his health care bill was going to be paid. Number three, I know someone personally whose premiums, just from the notice they got yesterday, went from $700 a month to $1,500 a month. Okay? So the reality is setting in. But here's the sweet spot of his lie. I want to give you money. For what? How much are you going to give them? Because if my premium is now $1,500 a month and you give me a $2,000 check, what are you covering? What am I going to do for the other 11 and a half months? Because even that $2,000 check is not even covering 1 month of premium.
So, two thoughts on this. The first is your friend's experience. Just one anecdotal example. Ironically, that's actually what is the average increase in a premium that's expected in Pennsylvania. The head of our Pennsylvania Obamacare exchange, called Penny, said that the average increase would be a little over 100%, 102%. So now imagine that one person you know multiplied by millions and millions of people throughout this country. The second thought is there actually is a group of people that Donald Trump has given money to this year. It's billionaires. And you know how they help pay for that bill? By cutting over $1 trillion from healthcare. Cuts to Medicaid, cuts to the ACA, cuts to Medicare providers. And that's why CBO projects 15 million Americans will lose their health care because of Donald Trump's bill, which essentially funded tax breaks for billionaires.
Texas Republicans are getting very, very nervous about what is shaping up to be a brutal and strange primary for U.S. Senate in their party. You see, Senator John Cornyn, right, who's served for over 20 years, is now facing a tough race for re-election. He's marred by low approval ratings, but crucially, he is fighting off a primary challenge, two of them actually, one from the state's far-right Attorney General Ken Paxton and Republican Congressman Wesley Hunt. Now, on the Democratic side, a rising star in the party, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, has just thrown her hat in the ring, announcing her candidacy hours before the state's filing deadline yesterday. She will now face off against just one primary opponent, young, charismatic state representative James Tallarico. That's after former Congressman Colin Allred, who ran in the last cycle, ended his Senate campaign yesterday to run for a new House seat instead. Joining us now is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas. Congresswoman, it's good to have you on. This was, as far as I can tell, there was even reporting saying that you had kind of like twin forms filled out and twin cashier's checks about whether filing for the House or the Senate race. So this came down to the last second. Like, take me through what pushed you over.
Yeah, so I'll tell you that I have been telling a lot of people that I was closer to a yes than a no. But I was really concerned. Number one, I was concerned about Democratic unity. I talked a lot about the fact that I really wanted us to have a very strong ticket. And instead of kind of having our star power put into one race, I wanted to see if we could somehow make it to where you could have an option for governor, say if you had nothing but state experience. See if we could have an option for, Senate. See if we could have lieutenant governor, attorney general, and really give different parts of the state of Texas someone to vote for and be excited about. And it's kind of hard to get around a state of 30 million people. We saw that Beto did it. He went to 254 counties, but Beto also literally worked himself into a sickness. He ended up being hospitalized more than once. And so I didn't feel like it made sense that we should just kind of have, maybe one big kind of race. But hey, at the end of the day, I thought that once the Supreme Court did what they did, that we absolutely needed to do something about getting the right person into the Senate. And it was interesting listening to your previous conversation. The oversight for the Senate, for the Supreme Court, it comes from the Senate. So those are the things that I was looking at, as well as my actual experience on the federal level, as well as being an attorney, and knowing that we need to change the Senate map if we're really going to get things like voting rights, if we're going to get reproductive access, if we're going to get health care, we've got to change what's happening in the Senate.
So there's a bunch of stories today about how your entrance into the race is welcome news for John Cornyn. There's like anonymous quotes from his staffers saying like, we're thrilled. There was people citing the fact that the Senate campaign arm of the Republicans had commissioned a poll that showed you ahead in the primary, that they were essentially trying to kind of pull you into the race, with the logic being that your perception and coding among Texas voters is as too anti-Trump or as too sort of polarizing to plausibly win a statewide election in a state that Democrats have, as we all know, not won a statewide election in like decades. What's your response to people who say, even people who are sympathetic to you, who are like, is this the person that could win like 8 to 10% of Republican voters necessary to win this race?
So I actually disagree with the characterization that we have to get 8 to 10%. What we know is that in this last election, approximately 51% of eligible voters in Texas voted. What we've not had is someone that could energize our base. That is abysmal. We are always one of the lowest voter turnout states. When you look at when we ended up getting 2 Democratic senators in the state of Georgia, just know it was because they got their voter participation up. And so that's what we plan to do. What we were testing for was we wanted to know, can I excite people that normally don't vote? And the answer was simply yes. In addition to that, we looked at Beto's results, because that is the best election for us to look to.
Yep.
It was a Trump, response type of election.
Yep.
And ultimately, we know that he won black and brown folk over overwhelmingly, and so am I in polling.
So in the Warnock and Ossoff examples, which do strike me as the closest model, right? In both those cases, it was a bit of both and, though, right? They definitely juiced turnout, and they definitely got high levels of turnout, but they also did win crossover voters. I mean, there's a pretty significant slice, and particularly if you look at those precincts and those Atlanta suburbs, particularly. So it does seem like both of those are necessary, particularly when you're looking at the numbers that you're staring down in Texas, which is, again, numerically, it's like it's not an easy place to win.
No, I think that you're absolutely right when you say that. But I think what we've got to look at is that when you look at, say, the district in Tennessee and the fact that Trump had won by a little over 20 points, yet somehow it swung to a single-digit race, then we know people that voted for Trump, well, some of them are regretting those votes. We just saw an election today down in Miami where a Republican was outed, and we know that they hadn't been able to win in 30 years down in that area. We also know what happened in Mississippi where they flipped 2 Senate seats. We also know what has happened in Georgia where they were able to get 2 statewide seats. So here is the reality. I don't think anyone who is super in love with Trump would ever vote for me or any other Democrat. That is just the reality. I think what it is who is going to talk to people and make them understand that they will fight for them. That is why you have Mondami Trump voters. That is why you have AOC Trump voters. That is why you had Obama Trump voters. Let me tell you something. Mondami has not backed down whatsoever from his rhetoric against the president. In the Oval Office, he stood there and he said what he said about him being a fascist, yet he was able to win those voters. So Democrats that believe the only way that you can win is by being soft and sounding like a Republican, that is not true. What people are looking for are people that are tough and are fighters and are going to fight for them, fight for better health care, fight for access to jobs, fight for education. That is what they're looking for, and that's what it is that I have to offer.
Yeah, I want to just, you mentioned this, so I want to bring it up. In Miami, Miami had a mayoral election tonight. It was a runoff. That city has not had a Republican, has not had a Democratic mayor, I think since the 1990s, nearly 30 years. The last election in 2021, the incumbent ran for a second term and he won by like 75 to 15, essentially. So tonight, the Democrat is going to win by between 10 and 20 points when all is. I mean, so there is something happening in the country right now. I want to play very quickly your ad that I thought was pretty interesting. This is the first ad I've seen from your very new campaign. Take a listen.
She's a very low IQ person.
Somebody said the other day she's one of the leaders of the party. I said, you got to be kidding.
Now they're going to rely on Crockett. Crockett's going to bring them back.
This is obviously a shot across the bow that this is going to be a campaign about Trump. Do you think Trump, that Trump is going to figure prominently in this one way or the other?
I think so. I think it's hard to say that he's not. I mean, when you see election wins like the one that you just referenced, obviously it's Trump's policies that are on the ballot. Right now, we have a senator that has decided that he won't fight for Texans, but instead he's decided that he will do whatever Trump tells him to do. We are one of the largest trade states in this country, in this nation, and unfortunately, we have somebody that will not go up against the president to protect our people that are doing trade in Texas when it comes to the tariffs. Or we can talk about the record-breaking number of farmers and ranchers that are filing for bankruptcy. And we do everything bigger in Texas, including agriculture, and he's not fighting for them. So I think right now it's just going to come down to the basics. Who's going to have your back? And the answer is Jasmine Felicia Crockett.
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, new entrant in that U.S. Senate race. We'll be right back.